Yokoso, minasan, I am the Anime Boss, and welcome back to another episode of Anime School of Business, the show where I get to teach you how to be a better manager through the world of anime. Now, to be honest, today's episode is a little different than our typical episode, and mostly because it deals with a pretty heavy topic for one, but also we're only going to deal with really one topic for the entire episode. Now, when I say that the topic is a heavy one, I don't really mean it's like this kind of heavy, but more like this kind of heavy. Now, it's a delicate topic. It's also one that only the bravest shows are willing to try and tackle.
Did you know that when one little panda pulls on another little panda's underwear, that's sexual harassment? That makes me a sad panda.
That's right, how to handle sexual harassment and sexual harassment investigations as a manager. And I can tell you, if love is war, then handling a sexual harassment claim is walking through a minefield. So let's put on your Detective Chika hat and we're gonna head on over to the student council room because today we're gonna investigate Kaguya Sama Love is War. Season 1 of Kaguya Sama Love is War was a lovable and completely unexpected experience that hooked me quickly after episode 3. And if you've seen the show, you probably know why. What starts as a typical they'll never get together anime evolved beautifully into visual and comedic genius with more soul than a southern preacher. It goes to show that a simple premise can be brilliantly executed, and Kaguya-sama delivers as Shinomiya and Shirogane vie for each other's affection, but only if the other confesses first. Surrounded by subtly developed and lovable side characters, this anime packs way more than you would expect. If you haven't checked it out, please do. I rarely laugh out loud. But Kaguya Sama Love is War caught me off guard multiple times. Now, while many others have already covered the incredible chemistry of our main characters, Shirogane and Shinomiya, what the anime does a really good job of is showcasing the multiple stages of how one would handle investigating a sexual harassment claim. And most importantly, a lot of the things that can go wrong. So let's just start with this. Let's see how delicate the workplace can really be.
どうする? これは触れていいものか?
君暗算型だね。
実はそれセクハラ案件だったりしないか?
Now in this scene we're introduced to what seems like a pretty vanilla situation. Many of you at home are probably wondering, oh, what's the big deal? I mean, it's just a compliment. We can't give a compliment at work anymore? While this may seem pretty cut and dry to most people, I'm here to tell you this is dangerous. You know, giving a simple compliment may seem like a really easy thing to do and an innocent thing to do. And to be honest, there's probably a 95% chance that it will be fine and it will be actually appreciated by the person receiving the compliment. The problem in today's working world is that as a manager, that other 5% where it's not okay is no longer worth the risk. To put it plain and simple, commenting on someone else's physicality in the work world is no longer safe. Much like how religion and politics are generally considered pretty taboo subjects to talk about in the work world. And the problem is, it's not just your intention that matters here, it's the perception of the one receiving the compliment is what really matters. Now, as a society, we are more sensitive than ever, and some of it's for good reason. Abusive and degrading gender objectification has happened, and it still happens, in the corporate world, and only recently has it begun to change for the better. The example of how a simple compliment can be perceived in the Kaguya-sama world is not that far from our own.
藤原先輩、リンス変えましたね。いつもと匂い違うんで。
石上くん、キモ。
あ、死のう。死にたいので帰ります。
Now, that reaction may seem a bit overblown, but let's think about it for a second. You know, there's a good chance you're not exactly best friends with your coworkers. In fact, you may not have even known them all that long to begin with. You know, just like Chika and Ishigami in this last example. You don't know what they've been through in previous jobs. You don't know if they've been through previous sexual harassment issues. You don't know if they have an abusive ex that they're dealing with, possibly even a stalker, or something much worse. You know, but these are the realities of the world we live in today. And unless the work you do happens to be a modeling agency, there's a good chance that someone's physicality has literally nothing to do with the everyday business that you do at your job. And as such, there is no reason to comment on it. You know, I would love to live in a world where we all trusted each other and nothing bad happened, and I'd want that as much as all of you do, I'm sure. and we should continue to strive toward that. But until that time comes, I highly recommend leaving physical commentary out of your vocabulary. It is just far too much of a risk. Now, if you absolutely find yourself in a situation that you just can't get out of, for instance, someone asks you point blank, hey, what do you think of this person's new hairstyle, as an example? My advice is to choose your adjectives very carefully.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Now, adjectives like hot and sexy, definitely write out. You know, you look very professional, or hey, that's a really smart look. Those are some safer options I would recommend for you. And in that way, you can still pass on the compliment without breaking the boundaries of a professional workplace environment. Now, this may seem overly cautious,
ほら中に
中にどんな危険が潜んでいるかわからない。だから俺は入らない。
until you're the one that's in the investigation. You know, intent is obviously very important, but it's often perception is the dominant factor in a workplace. So play it safe and keep it professional. Now this leads us to our second lesson. So you've now seen what a simple compliment can do and how it can throw you into a full-blown investigation. And that really happens. But now, what do you as a manager do about it? Well, quite simply, you begin an investigation.
I want full cavity searches. Everyone, go deep on them.
Now, if you can, you should always involve someone from your HR team, ideally an HR manager or director, in your investigation process with you. And you are going to, objectively as possible, try and gather all the facts about what actually happened. And you're going to want to talk to everybody, the people themselves, witnesses to what may have happened, people that the witnesses told the story to, whoever they were their confidants in. You want to get everybody that may have touched this situation in one way or another, because your goal is to try and corroborate all of the information to figure out what actually happened. In episode 10, we see the aftermath of Shirogane and Shinomiya's sick visit and what supposedly transpired there. So if you're in this situation, how many people would you interview? I'll give you a second to think about. The answer, based on the anime at least least 6 characters. We're going to want to talk to Shinomiya, Shirogane for sure, obviously. This is called getting the statement. These are from the main 2 people that were involved. But we also want to talk to Ishigami, Kashigawa, Fujiwara, and even Hayasaka, as she was also involved. Surprised? That is the depth of which an investigation must go. Pull the department's schedules if you aren't sure who was there, review cameras if your work has them, and get statements from anyone that was directly connected to or was even talked to about the situation, or may have been around before or after it occurred. Hayasaka was directly involved, even though she didn't see anything, but she can help us by corroborating the sounds that were heard, timing details, and maybe more. Ishigami and Kashigawa can recount how the stories were told to them to see if the story is consistent from the statements of Shirogane and Shinomiya. Also, pro tip from the boss here, always do these investigations and most importantly, these interviews with someone else. Ideally some kind of independent third party, because the last thing you want to do is talk to someone one-on-one and then have them spin what happened in that interview against you. That's a he said, she said situation, and that is the bane of management. Now, ideally, this person's from HR, and best case scenario, real high level thinking here, big brain investigation, that person is the opposite gender of you, especially if you're doing sexual harassment claims. Also, let's pay a little attention to the reactions that the confidants had, Ishigami and Kashigawa.
はあ、なんすかそのクソ女。クソオブクソじゃないですか。自分から誘っておいですかね。絶対めんどくさいですよ、その女。
そもそも同金までしたんですから、男の人は責任取って告白の一つでもしてくるべきです。
Now these one-sided reactions are very, very common in the workplace. And there's an obvious reason for it. People fucking suck. People's relationships to those that were involved in the main investigation must be taken into account. A really important skill to try and have as a manager is separating the personal opinions from them from the objective facts that actually transpired. Now, a witness who is also a friend of one of the people in the investigation might try and tell you something like, oh yeah, they were so rude the way they said that. Oh, it was like super rude. Now, that could be true, but that's also quite a perception, especially if it's like super over-characterized or exaggerated. It's not to say it may not be relevant, it may very well be relevant, but it's only relevant if you can corroborate it with other people's opinions of what happened also. Most likely what's happening is the person's personal relationship with those involved in the investigation is starting to cloud their judgment a little bit. Focus on what words were actually said, what physically happened, and try to avoid asking people what they thought about what happened, or their thoughts on the person involved. People investigations, turns out they like to talk, and they will likely volunteer that information to you anyways. There's no need to dig for it, and it's rarely relevant to your investigation as a manager. Finally, the investigation is complete, you have all the facts together, and maybe you've even resolved the issue.
怒鳴ってごめんなさい。
いやこちら
Everyone apologizes and everything's fine, right?
おかわいいこと。
Think again. On to our last topic, retaliation. And it can take a lot more forms than you might expect.
食べてください。
冗談じゃない篠宮が食え
Retaliation is incredibly serious, and as a manager, you should be serious about it also. Retaliation can take many forms, from directly being rude to a coworker and calling them out for ratting you out, or to no longer talking to them, possibly out of fear that what you say may be misinterpreted, and so you don't want to say anything at all. But even that can be interpreted as retaliation. Here's the definition. Anything that dramatically alters a professional workplace environment in which the two work together could be considered retaliation. A slight negative comment,
You're You are so you don't realize what you're doing.
being passed up for a promotion, being given a different schedule, or just even being standoffish to the people involved. All those things could be considered retaliatory. Now, technically, either party can be guilty of retaliation, but let's be honest here, most of the times, it's the one that's accused that ends up being the one retaliating back. I didn't say that like I'm being accused. I'm not being accused, right? What happens is this creates what's called a hostile work environment. And in most companies, this only means one thing.
You're fired. You're fired.
Why? Why is termination the result in this case? Well, it is essential for a business to have a really strong anti-retaliation policy. And the reason why is simple. If you don't have it, people will be afraid to bring up issues to their managers, especially if the managers are the problem themselves. That sentence could not be more important. Many issues never come to the surface in a business because workers are afraid of angering their boss, or they're afraid of standing out, afraid of being accused of something themselves, so they just endure it. This is especially true if the boss is the problem, not me, right? Taryn, I'm not a problem. You may still have to work for them after the investigation. Maybe. So companies must have strong anti-retaliation policies to make their workers feel safe to bring up concerns, and you as a manager have a very important role, making sure the people involved in the investigation know this. Always end a discussion or interview for an investigation with a very important sentence. And to remind you, our company has a very strong anti-retaliation policy, and we will be monitoring to ensure that our workplace culture is maintained professionally during and after this investigation. Something like that, at least. You need to proactively let the accused and anyone involved know that they can't take out their frustration on the accuser after this meeting, and let the accuser know that they're safe to bring up these concerns. Don't think the investigation is done just because two people made up on the surface. A misunderstanding can be resolved, but can also then lead to a hostile environment due to the anger of being dragged through an investigation. No one likes corporate investigations, but they are essential to protecting the business, your team, and yourself as a leader. Now, you want to hear something really crazy? As a leader, if you ignore a sexual harassment claim on your team, you personally can be held directly liable for the damages, not the business. Crazy, right? You personally. So as a leader, you need to take everything seriously. Any claim brought to your attention should be handled as if it's a real claim. And you need to take it well past the initial resolution and continue to monitor for a hostile work environment after the fact. The resolution is not the end of your work. Do not fall into that trap.
藤原さん。あの子私が育てたんですよ。
Now, who would have thought that such a funny and enjoyable anime could have so well highlighted a really major issue that a lot of managers have to deal with in the workplace? Now, personally, I hope you never have to deal with this, either as an investigator or as being accused. But don't let these serious topics dissuade you from getting into management, or most importantly, from not watching this anime, because it's great. It's all part about helping yourself grow and helping others grow as well. Now, what about you? Have you ever made a comment to someone at work that maybe got taken the wrong way and you were surprised? Or perhaps there's someone at your job that's always passing you compliments and maybe it's making you a little uncomfortable. Ever brought up a concern to your boss and then suddenly felt like you're getting treated differently or getting crappier schedules or less opportunity? Don't be afraid to talk to your boss or to HR if you are feeling any of these things yourself. Hopefully it's just a misunderstanding, but maybe it isn't. So thank you so much for watching this episode of Anime School of Business. Sorry it's a little bit heavy. Of course, we'll be keeping it nerd casual for the next one. This meeting is adjourned. Iterashai.